Crooked River, Chapter 17. Peter Kelly finally came back on a day that Laura was making soap at the Hollies. When I opened the door and saw his familiar coat, I knew that Laura would never forgive herself for leaving. We had just about given up all hope of seeing him again. Day after day we had jumped to each knock on the door, only to find another person waiting outside. "May I come in?" Mr. Kelly said in a hurried voice. He had a square haversack slung over one shoulder, and in his left hand he held a brown leather book that was stuck full of papers. I nodded and wished that Laura was there. Mercy was playing with a big pile of wood shavings on the floor behind me, and I am sure that I looked like the foolishest thing with wood shavings stuck all over my clothes. All the things I had been intending to ask Peter Kelly had suddenly left my head. "Laura ain't here," I said as he stepped inside. "She's gone off to the Hollies for the day." Mr. Kelly hesitated. I watched as he gazed up at the loft above our heads, and then back at the door he had come through. I could tell he was considering whether to leave or stay. "I don't know when I can find a way to return, not with all the men in the fields and the settlement as busy as it is," he mumbled, as if he was speaking to himself more than me. He gave me an uncertain look. "You'll keep an ear out for your pa and brothers?" he asked. I nodded. "You'll tell me if you hear anyone coming down the road?" I nodded again. Reluctantly, he started up the steps to the chamber loft. While he was talking to Indian John, I sat in the open doorway of the cabin, slowly cutting up a bowl of potatoes, and keeping an eye out for Pa and the boys, who had gone to the settlement. Mercy played on the floor behind me. I tried to decide what to say to Mr. Kelly before he left. Should I warn him about Mr. Perry and the other men? Tell him everything I had overheard in the store? Was it blasphemous to repeat the words my brother Amos had said about the trial? Or should I just keep silent, as my pa always said I ought to do? At the sound of Mr. Kelly's footsteps, my heart thudded in my chest and my mouth felt dry as ashes. I could not think of words to say. The questions tossed to and fro in my mind. He would surely think I was a half-wit or a fool if I spoke, and how could I go against my pa and the men? I ran my tongue across my lips as Mr. Kelly was tucking the brown book back into his haversack. I stammered quickly. "Will you win, do you think?" It was not the question I was fixing to ask, but it was the only one that came out. "Win?" he squinted at me. "The trial," I said. Peter Kelly's forehead wrinkled up as if he was thinking what to say, and his serious brown eyes stared at me for what seemed like a long time before he replied. I reckon maybe he didn't want to answer on account of who my pa was and what I might tell him. But finally he said, "Yes, Miss Rebecca, I will win." His voice was as sure and solid as a block of stone, and I had to swallow hard when I heard it because I figured he didn't know a thing about Mr. Perry and the men. "What if the men aim—" I paused, praying that Pa would never find out what I did. "What if the men aim, well, to cause you trouble?" I said in a voice that was almost a whisper. "Trouble?" "At the trial," I mumbled. "Because of you, well, defending an Indian." Mr. Kelly slung his haversack over his shoulder and gave me a wide, easy grin. "I don't expect the judge or the sheriff would stand for that," he said with a shrug. "And if someone didn't serve as the lawyer for the Indian side, what sort of trial would there be?" Peter Kelly ducked through the doorway and was gone before I could tell him what my brother had said, or that the truth be told the sheriff was for the Crooked River settlement. The sheriff for the Crooked River settlement might not help him either. He was one of my pa's good friends, and he was none too fond of Indians either, from what I knew. But perhaps Peter Kelly was right. Perhaps the judge would be on his side. In my mind, I hear the words of Redhair telling me how it will be. When I am brought to the trial, I will stand before a judge and 12 other white men who will decide right and wrong. I do not understand, I tell my old friend. If an Indian murders a man, it is the man's family, brothers, sons, fathers, who decide right and wrong. They are the only ones who know what should be done. Why would a white chief and 12 strangers take revenge for a murder that has not happened to them, I ask? Red Hair says it is the law of the white men. They must prove that I am guilty of the crime. But I am not guilty, I tell Red Hair, and if they asked the family of the murdered man, they would know I speak the truth. My friend sighs and tells me that after I see it with my own eyes and listen with my own ears, I will understand the fair justice of the white man.